or
And
not.
good evening, everybody. We are back. Welcome to the latest edition of You Get What You Get. I'm Rickey Hampton, along with my co-host Tree McDougal and Tim Turner. I think we lost Tree for a moment. I'm sure she'll be back shortly, Tim. But my brother, it is so good to see you. It is so good to be back on the air with you guys.
It's good to see you. It's like a lot has happened in the last 2-3 weeks. We got a new World Series champ. We got college football's winding down. We got NBA play-in madness, and it's a lot of sports. A lot of HBCU basketball starting. HBCU's doing their playoff thing where they normally do. So a lot going on.
And Tim, I don't know if you saw this. I saw it just before we went on the air. Andre Dawson wants to change his Hall of Fame Montreal Expos cap to a Chicago Cub cap.
Okay. I did not see that, but you know what? People like him, he could do that. This is my deal. Because I think he played with the Marlins too, right?
Played with the Marlins. Yeah, but
okay.
he was after when he went to Miami, that was the end of his career, and that's his hometown too.
Right. But I was kind of upset with Greg Maddux because people who played with like 3 zillion teams, they have the option of which team they want to have on their hat. And he goes with like an American flag. He and Gaylord Perry, people like that who played for like multiple teams. And granted, Maddux in his heyday was an Atlanta Brave. It wasn't the Chicago Cubs who gave him his start. It wasn't the LA Dodgers. It wasn't, I think he might have pitched at San Diego. It wasn't any of those teams, but he chose because he played with several teams to go with a flag over his hat. Gaylord Perry played for like 16 teams. That's understandable. Somebody who's like almost worn every jersey in the league. You know, where did you get your fame? Longevity is what he was about.
But sorry I was late.
But the Hawk, man, I mean, you really remember him. Well, you knew he was coming in Montreal. Who's this young, outstanding player, and the country got to see him in Chicago.
Yeah, he became a national person in Chicago. I mean, you think of the teams that Ryan Sandberg. I can go around there. I can see the Mark Grace. You know, I can see the infield. I can see Boa.
Sutcliffe.
Yeah, Rick Sutcliffe. I can see all those cats. Lee Smith. Because the Cubs are on the Superstation, just like the Braves. Braves had fans across the nation because of WTV as a Superstation. And then Major League Baseball screwed it up with all these regional things. And then where you have a brother like me who's streaming, who can't get his Braves games at all unless they're playing national games. The best season they've had in forever, a historic season, I saw maybe 5 games.
Really?
Because Bally's doesn't have an agreement with YouTube TV, nor does MLB Network have an agreement with YouTube TV.
Yeah.
And YouTube TV and MLB, they cut their thing off like a week before the season started. So that kind of foolishness.
So
yeah.
Tim,
yes,
perhaps
ma'am?
you should, sorry to interrupt, perhaps you should get something in addition to or instead of YouTube TV if you're not able to see your sports.
Well, I was thinking that because but Hulu has it. Plug, shout out to Hulu. They have it.
Hulu has Hulu has live sports, right?
Hulu has live sports. Yeah. They have it. They have it at all. But I've already gotten entrenched into YouTube TV. It's excellent otherwise. But with live sports, it's a challenge. If you're not ESPN or
so Fox, you don't have the red zone.
No, see that's another thing in Georgia for that NFL Sunday ticket package, where everybody else in the free world can take little bites, little $60, $70 bites a month to pay it. In Georgia, you got to pay the whole lump sum up front.
Wow.
So it's like nobody has that kind of money laying around in the house or in the cushions of their couch. What are they thinking? So
evidently we do, because evidently somebody in my household does, because we have Red Zone.
Red Zone. Well, you have Comcast. You have Comcast. I'm talking about streaming. YouTube.
That Red Zone is
I
how
don't
I
have
watch.
Comcast.
You watch
Pardon?
Red Zone Tree?
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah,
live with Red. Red Zone was all I would watch because it's like I want to
that's
see
how I watch.
scores, and
Yeah,
I
that's how I
marvel
watch.
at Scott Hansen never going to the restroom.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
from 1 to 7, brothers on camera.
Hey, we have, I have to say, the most beautiful guest we've ever had on this show appearing later
I would
tonight.
agree.
So, and
I would agree.
she just happens to be my wife, the lovely Dr. Rebecca Motley Hampton. I may ask her for a date live on air. We'll see. But before we bring on
This ain't Valentine's Day.
Dr. Hampton, the most disappointing thing I've heard all year, really, I read about today. Tim, I think you sent it out this morning. The notion that Sports Illustrated is using AI writing. It's using AI to write stories, and then on top of
Mind blown.
using
Mind
fake
blown.
bonds.
I'm just, yeah.
That
You know, I think we're all at words. I was running a little bit behind because I'm in class, and one of the things we've been talking about in this program I'm in is about artificial intelligence. And so while I can't imagine doing it in journalism, but I think that it'll be used, but you got to have somebody check. But in journalism, that didn't make sense to me. No.
Right. Well, there you go. Well, this is the second attempt at it. They got busted on it, and they took everything down once they got busted on it. But Gannett it started the football season, I think, tried it with some high school sports, and it was a miserable failure, rife with, errors. And it was just totally messed up. I know that one website that I look at on the regular, HBCU Game Day, they use AI generated stories.
Really?
And they're very generic and just, it's. I understand people trying to, deal with the bottom line and thinking it's going to cut corners, but, you're looking at quality of product. And I don't have the same regard and respect for HBCU Game Day that I had before, because they don't want to have people there on site or however. I don't know what the rationale is for not having, granted, HBCU SIDs are pretty weak, to say the least. On the whole, they're not like they used to be. They really cared about their product.
Flavor, some personality with them, man.
The guys I dealt with when I was doing the SWAC were outstanding to a person. Every SWAC school had somebody that cared about all their school, all the sports, and cared about getting coverage. It seemed like these people, the more information you have, the lazier people are getting. And I just, shout out on the lousy job that a lot of these conferences and individual schools are doing in promoting their product, because it's really weak and it's lame.
You know what, man? If you got to do that, just don't cover the event. Just don't
Exactly. Don't do anything. If you're gonna if you're gonna look jacked up, just don't do it at all. Yeah. Ain't no half stepping, as I've heard somewhere in my life.
Ain't no half stepping.
Yes, I have heard that.
For sure, man, that is just outrageous. Well, you know what? I think I'm gonna bring our guest on, because I'm gonna try to get a date from her later on tonight. So the sooner I can get her off the air, the sooner we can get on with the evening. And
love is in the air.
We are lucky to have my lovely wife, Dr. Rebecca Motley Hampton, join us tonight to really talk about a serious subject, CTE. We've been reading about and hearing about CTE impact in football for I guess the last 10 years has really been big stories. And every team has a story that they can tell. every franchise has a story that they could tell about multiple players who've had issues with CTE. There have been lawsuits. You had the movie about CTE a couple of years ago that came out, and now recently there's evidence that this is happening at a younger and younger age in the sport of football. And Dr. Motley Hampton, we wanted to just run some of these thoughts by you when you hear about, high schoolers having CTE. Kathy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Is there a question there?
Yeah, just your overall your thoughts about. Are you surprised to hear that it's occurring in such young athletes?
Okay. Well,
These kids have been
the
teenagers.
first thing that we have to understand is that what's advancing is the science. The disease isn't affecting the kids any younger, except that we have them playing this contact sports younger. But if 100 years ago they had been playing the contact sports at age 6, you would have seen the illness at age 6. So that's a cultural thing that we have changed. We involve our kids in the sports earlier. The disease was actually first described in 1928. So it's almost 100 years old. We haven't not known about it. We used to call it, I think, dementia I can't remember. Pugilistalis. It was described for boxers by a Dr. Martland, I think, in 1928. So it's not that the disease is changing. It's not affecting kids younger. We have kids playing sports younger. I think what we're failing to do, unfortunately, is take it a little more seriously and appreciate that the illness affects a much larger population of athletes than we are identifying. Okay. So we've always known that football players could have problems. We've always known that boxers had problems. We've always known that rugby players had problems. But I don't think it was until after 1960 we started appreciating soccer players having these problems. Okay. I don't think it was until later that we have started really looking at wrestlers. So we need to appreciate that any sport that's a contact sport can potentially have this kind of damage. And then the second thing where I think we're failing our public, our kids, our parents is not, and I don't know if it's our fault as scientists. We don't really have a good handle on this disease yet, but it's not making it really clear to them what they need to be watching for. No one has structured for a mom when she's deciding whether or not to let her kid play, what she's going to watch for, what's going to kind of pull her coattail and tell her, there's something bad happening to your child.
Dr. Rebecca, I was a story I sent to your husband and to Tim was about I don't know if he shared it with you or not, but what was surprising to me, even parents who had children who had died as a result of the disease, but still had children, some were okay with them still playing because they said that their child loved the game and they didn't want to take that away from them. To me, that was, I think, to lose a child, and I don't have children, but I would think that would be devastating enough not to want your other children to continue to play the sport that ultimately contributed to the death of your other child. And it would.
Well, I think that there are probably a lot of reasons. When you're a sports parent, you're seeing so many children playing, and even when it is your child that's the child that's lost, you see that as kind of a little pittance in the pool of all the children that are playing and don't have the illness. So I don't think that it's it's unreasonable that a mother would not anticipate that her second child would necessarily have the same problems. Okay. But there's some things that I think we're starting to look at that suggest to me that as a mother, I would almost be certain that my second child would have the same problem. One part of it is that there is a cultural part to this illness. The people who are under 30, the players, athletes who are under 30 who died, and this comes from a study of 164 brains that were donated from different athletes to be studied. One of the consistent things about that was that the largest percentage of them died by suicide. Okay. And another percentage of them who didn't die by suicide died by accidental overdoses. Okay. So we understand that people who get involved with drugs, there are certain cultural trends that can lead people to drug abuse, to these kinds of problems. So if I had a family where, for example, just a simple example would be everybody thinks that if I have a headache, I take a pill. Okay. Simple thought, right? Nothing wrong with that, right? However, what happens when you have a kid who's in stage 1 of CTE and having headaches all the time, and he is being encouraged to self-medicate by his family's tendency to self-medicate? Okay. That kid's going to be in trouble because it's not going to be very long before he's going to self-medicate from the streets. Okay. Aspirin, ibuprofen, all the over-the-counter stuff is not going to really be helping him after a point. So I think that as a parent, you have to be aware of these things. If you say, yes, my son can play football, which I would never let my kid play football anyway, but if you say, yes, my son can play football, then you got to have some real stringent standards for yourself. What am I watching for? What am I going to do if these symptoms develop? What symptoms am I watching for to develop? A lot of moms, I think, and especially dads, I think when their sons become kind of a little hyper aggressive, I think they think that's part of the man building process that goes with the game. Okay. And that can be a really significant sign of stage 2 CTE.
Yeah.
Mood change, personality change. Are you watching for that? Are you asking your kid, are you putting a little passive kid in there? Did dad tell his son to play football because he wanted him to be more aggressive and more, And if that's the case, when is enough enough? Is he aggressive enough if he's just making tackles, or does he need to be fighting with the other guys?
I want to get Tim in here, but Tim, before you go, I just want to read this right quick. This is, and I think Kathy was speaking from the Boston University study at Boston University's CTE Center, which they discovered 60 cases of CTE of young people under 30 at the time of their death. And Tim, just to add this quickly, 60% of those cases were football, followed by 15% from soccer and 10 from hockey. And rugby and wrestling was also included in those studies. I just wanted to put that out there. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, you stole my thunder. I was going to speak because I understand that really soccer is really catching up to football in terms of concussions. Yeah. Especially youth soccer, because you got some really uncoordinated kids out there playing soccer, trying to hit headers and whatever it is and smashing into each other and that kind of stuff. And it is catching up with football. But I was thinking back to that New York Times video that Tree sent out to us, I think end of last week, where one of the families that they talked to is the family of Mike Loxley and his wife. And as you know, Mike Loxley is the head football coach at the University of Maryland. And their kid in his early 20s who'd been playing football forever and a day, committed suicide. And Mike, as a football coach, was like, I still haven't played football. You know, there were parents there that said, I would have never let my kid ever play. And this is sort of like a reaction. You say that, I say this is a reaction to the same thing with Damar Hamlin when he had a heart attack last year for Buffalo. You know, all these parents are saying my kid will never play football, but you know, it comes and it goes. I mean, it's not a hot story anymore.
But Tim, they're not. You're not going to play football, but they send him out on the soccer field.
Right. Yeah. It's safer to play soccer. I'd rather them get, you know, to have this concussion to be head to head as opposed to helmet to helmet.
Yeah.
You know, that's the trade-off there, where it's a more immediate effect with soccer. They think it's less of a thing. You know, you don't get concussions in basketball. You get them in hockey. You don't really get them in track, and you don't get them playing video games at all. I think the chances of that are near zero for video game. But playing football is a tough sport. That you see where they try to legislate the kind of hits that they used to allow out of football, just for the sake of bodily injury. Where you talk about hitting a defenseless player, I think on Thursday, halftime of the Raiders game, they showed the piece on Darryl Stingley's family. Whereas the hit that Jack Tatum did on Stingley, it can't happen in the NFL now. It's a penalty. Yeah. It's that kind of thing. You know, it was a far more violent game then. I mean, the kids are wearing better pads. They're trying to develop these helmets that are better. You see these penalties for targeting, where they say you lead with the helmet, you're being penalized for it. They're trying to teach kids how to tackle appropriately without using their head. And maybe the numbers have come down, but it's still not to the point where if you're starting a kid playing football at 6, and by the time he's 18 or 19, he's had his bell rung a couple of times. You know, and when your parents are saying shake it off, you know, what are you going to do?
Well, yeah. The problem with that, Tim, is that people tend to think that the injuries that we're talking about, the quote bell rung, the head, the targeting injuries, they're looking at the coup injury. The coup injury is the impact this against that, right? But that's not what's causing the CTE. Your brain is like a big heavy ball that sits inside fluid, inside this rigid container, your skull, right? And even when the skull stops moving, the brain bounces back and forth, okay? So that's the injury that's causing the tearing, the bleeding, the production of the tau protein. That's the injury. And I don't care how much you put cushions outside or change the helmet, you're not going to be able to stop that brain from bouncing back and forth. Okay.
Great point.
Wait a minute. I got a question here. So why is it you always tell me stuff goes in one of my ears and straight through the other?
Uh-oh.
Wow.
That's that alien head thing.
I didn't see that one coming, Ricky.
I think that when parents and also when the sport comes to grips with that fact, okay, you have to also come to grips with the fact that it's not necessarily that these injuries are occurring more frequently, okay? It's not necessarily that the sports are causing it more than the trauma of hunting or a lot of things that have occurred, because men always fought. Did gladiators have these injuries?
Yeah.
What about when they rode on, what did you call it when you rode on those horses with the lancers?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there has always been the potential to have these kinds of injuries just because we're advancing the science enough to discover and diagnose and categorize and count the injured. That's what seems to be making the numbers go up too. Okay.
But even
So,
with,
so
with
if you accept that as a mother, and I'm not a mother either. I'm a stepmom, but I'm an evil stepmom, but I'm not a mother either, Tree. So, but I think I would anticipate if I were a mother that if you accept that, okay, that your child has always been at risk. It's just like I never wore a helmet when I was a kid biking. Did your mom make you wear a helmet when you were biking when you were little?
Well, I couldn't know, and I couldn't ride outside my driveway, so it was a very short
Oh,
distance.
really? Well, we were in Iowa City, Iowa. We could go anywhere we wanted, but we did not have all the gear, the knee pads, the elbow pads, the helmets.
Right.
Okay.
yeah.
And yes, everyone was having head injuries,
Mm.
right? So at some point in time as a mother, you have to ask yourself once again, what am I going to be watching for? What's going to be my limit? What's going to be the stopping point? If there has to be a stopping point, where? And I think that if we started there, if we just started saying, okay, we're going to let the kids play, but we have to set some kind of personal standards for where we stop. Where do we stop? And when do we start? Because I think 6, even though my husband is a huge Little Tykes fan. What is that thing?
Friday Night Tykes. Friday Night Tykes.
Friday Night Tykes.
I love that show.
Oh my God, where they're just
I don't know that
those
show.
little children. Oh my goodness.
Well, they're not running hard enough to hit to break a paper bag. So you can enjoy. And I was going to ask you that too, Doctor. That when do you let them start? Do you start them at 10? Do you start them at 12? Do you start them, post puberty? When do you allow them to say their bodies are developed enough to play football? Is it a weight thing? Is it a size? Is a kid to be a certain size? And not so much chronological age, but if it's a big kid, I've seen some big 12-year-olds and some small ones. So is it a weight thing? I mean, where is the differentiation there?
I think that with with football, like any other sport, you need to break down what are the skills that you're trying to develop. Okay. And I appreciate that you want your child to be able to take a hit. And that's probably one of the skills that they need to be developing, right? Is to take a hit. Okay. But as little boys who grew up, you guys know that you didn't necessarily have to be hit to learn to take a hit, right? You just learned that some things you're going to have to shake off. So I don't know that the question is when can they start playing football? It's when can they start playing that football? We played touch football and tag football when we were little, okay? At our grade school, we didn't have full contact football. We had tag football. They had little tags they had in their pockets.
Yeah, flag football.
Flag football. Okay,
Yeah.
they're developing a substantial amount of the skills, right? But without that much trauma. Right now, the speculation is that and remember, science we don't even have biomarkers to measure, to follow, to know how to make the diagnosis. We don't have any treatment. Science right now is starting to suggest that kids probably should not play full contact football until late teens. So 16, 17, 18. Okay. Not because they won't develop CTE, but because they'll develop it later.
Yeah, because really, the human body is not made to play football. I mean, straight up. But Tree, I was going to say, when you hear some of the coaches talk, and they want and especially at the NFL level, they talk about, man, we need to play violent out there today. You have to be violent. Let them feel you. Let them know, for all the safety precautions on game day, they are still trying to be as violent and as disruptive as possible to dislodge that football from a ball carrier's possession.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ricky, because at the end of the day, they're just trying to win. They're trying to get them hyped up, and that aggression comes out. But Tim, you played football. And did your kids play football?
They did, and they didn't like being hit, and they moved on.
Okay.
Moved on to basketball and track, and that was it. So no, it was I mean, you can't make them if they don't have a love for the game. You can't make them. And I wasn't going to make them. I wasn't going to torture them by saying you stay out there and get beat up all season long just for the sake of my pride.
But did you get your bell rung? I know.
Oh yeah, a lot, several times. Yeah, but you come back and
that explains it. It's so clear now.
There was a lot of sloshing, inside this head growing
up. Kathy, we won't keep you too much longer. Just if you could just summarize this for us, what we're facing with this issue, because I mean, clearly CTE is not going anywhere.
No, it's not going anywhere, and it's not been anywhere. It's always been here. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
It's always been developing. We used to just call them different forms of dementia. Okay. The protein that is involved in CTE is very similar to the protein involved in Alzheimer's disease. So you're not very far apart, and that's part of what's making it very hard to make it is a distinctive diagnosis. Okay. So I don't think that we're going to go anywhere. So whenever you have a situation like this, sort of like with COVID, when you have a problem that is not going anywhere and not going to change that much, you continue to try to learn about the problem, but you have to start trying to learn more about prevention, right? If you can't make it go away, how do you not get the disease? Right? And that's where we need to focus. And that's why I say that any parent putting their child on a field, okay, needs to be aware of the facts that Tree is stating for us, okay? Read that article, pay attention, listen. In part of making your decision about letting your child on the field, I hear all these moms saying, but what did the one mom say? But he loves it so much. I would let him do it all over again because he loved it so much. I've never heard of a stranger answer to me. That's not relevant to the entire question in my book. But what moms need to decide is, okay, then if that's not relevant, what is relevant? What is relevant? What are my limits for my child? What are going to be my limits? Okay. One father said, life happens, right? He let his son play because life happens, and you make your choices and take the consequences of your choices, right? Even if you're a 6-year-old, I guess. But so that wouldn't be my husband, because we would have to get divorced over that very concept. Okay. But that is one way to look at it. It's a fair way to look at it. All I'm saying is parents need to be starting to look at these things. Families need to be starting to ask themselves, when they start seeing these symptoms, how can we support them? And it's not, because the disease so parallels dementia, they're not alone looking at these questions. The mood changes, the behavioral changes. A lot of it looks like frontal temporal dementia, where people become hyper aggressive, over sexualized. Those are the old people that go in public and take their clothes off, things like that, right? So you get a big parallel there. You'll see the same thing with CTE as it enters stage 3, right? People lose their ability to make rational decisions about their own behavior, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we support these people? And the one thing, if I was going to say one take home for anybody out there listening, is the disease is a progressive disease. Stopping them from playing is not going to stop the disease from being able to progress. Okay? So the support systems can slow the progression of the disease. And if you're going to let your kid do it, then you got to be prepared for the other side of that.
Where's the
Your
one question?
family needs to be prepared.
Is it irreversible? You're saying slows the progression. Is it irreversible? Can you stop it once it started?
No. Can you stop the progression of CTE by stopping playing football? No. It's going to progress.
Ooh, that's some sobering.
Why? If you think about it, because if you never played it, if you never got hit in your head in your whole life, your brain still had a tendency to develop the same kinds of problems, right? With Alzheimer's, with other forms of dementia, with vascular dementias, and all the different dementias and all the different categories, and there are quite a few. So your brain is already heading in that direction, right? So if you've given it these extra proteins by repeatedly getting your head injured, you're pushing it down that road that it was already going to head down.
Hey, Dr. Martin, before you go, our viewers around the country, give us 45 seconds about where you think we are with COVID now. What would you tell a group of people sitting in the audience as we are 3 or 4 years out of COVID?
I would say pay attention to what we all should have learned from being in the peak of our COVID scare. Okay, masking helps. Washing your hands helps. Isolating yourself, staying away from people helps. Staying home when you're sick, it all helps. Okay. Getting your vaccines helps. You've got to do these things. And you'll notice if you turn on any channel in the entire world right now, we're seeing a rapid increase in all these different respiratory illnesses. So I think specifically with COVID, I think generally people have understood that there have been new variants coming to the forefront. Now it seems that we have variants almost more rapidly than we can name and describe them. The organism might be changing in different parts of the world in so many different ways that we can't even link them together and say, well, this is actually COVID making all this happen. Okay, so now all of a sudden we're seeing so much more RSV. We're seeing so many other problems. So it is an illness that we're going to have to live with. It's just like we just said, when you know that it's going to be out there and you have to live with it, you have to ask yourself how to prevent yourself from getting it. And you have to ask yourself, how do you support and live through them, right? Yeah. And we need to get as good at that as we can. I hope, though, with our present president, we'll do better at people understanding that there are measures that you can take, like vaccines or taking the Paxlovid, which when my husband got COVID, he kept telling me, well, I don't feel sick, so I don't think I need to take it. I don't care if you feel sick. I'm trying to fight the virus, not you. Huh?
I say I'm definitely your worst patient. I know that.
I mean, but do you see what I'm saying? There's all these rationales that people have for how they manage their health. And it would be probably more useful if you looked at the big picture and you said there's something out there and I have to protect myself the best I can. Any tool that I have in my toolbox, I have to be willing to use it when I need to.
Dr. Motley Hampton, thank you so much, darling.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Tree, and Tim, I guess I get to meet you guys soon. Looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm looking forward to having you for lunch.
That was Kathy Motley Hampton. Rebecca is a official, Kathy's a middle name. That's what everybody calls her. But that was good. She was really good, really interesting, and really kind of sobering, because that is a game we all love, but it takes its toll. And like I was mentioning earlier, Tim, you hear the guys talk about, you have to be violent out there. You gotta let them know to feel you. And then we're talking about being safe.
Yeah, I think what I like when she really illustrated, that Tim was talking about the helmets and better protection, as you said, all of that, but your brain is still moving with
Yes.
that impact. I think to me that kind of really brings it home of what's happening within your body. It's not just the helmet; it's what's happening internally.
Well, like several years ago, ESPN on Monday Night Football, before the Monday Night Football game, they had a segment called "Jack You Up," where they would show these really crazy, violent hits.
Yeah.
Jack you up.
Then they got
he got jacked up.
Yeah, he got jacked. They would all say in unison, he got jacked up. And so players wanting to be on that video on that Monday, go out there Sunday and just crush somebody.
Just jack people, just jack them up, huh?
Exactly. And so they stopped that. They stopped that segment because you saw these videos of these violent hits and people were trying to, people want to be seen and known, for these hits and being tough. Get up there and they are just damaging people, ending careers. Like she said, there's no reverse. It's irreversible. Once it begins, you're on that path. So,
and you remember, you see these stories in the, I guess, 80s, 90s about how football players died at an early age. We now know that was CTE.
Absolutely.
That was,
you examine these brains. You got guys who commit suicide. You got Dave Durson, thinking of Junior Seau.
Yeah.
Those guys there who were just absolutely specimens of men.
Yeah.
But their brains weren't there.
So think about that for a moment. If you're like a 6-year-old kid, you don't have a decision. You don't, you're not deciding at 6, right? That I want to go out here and do this. I don't know. But they don't have any, if the parents are urging them to do that, they don't have any decision about their own health at that point. So,
and I think down here where the culture is, football is a religion, essentially. You're going to play football, you're going to play something, or you're going to be on a team or whatever. And I know I've been on teams when I was in Pop Warner teams where there are kids out there who had zero interest in playing football. Practice, they were sitting out there, picking grass.
You're going to be in some organized sport, right?
Yeah, as parents are trying to, get their kids to be around other folks. And I get that. I get all of that. I put my kids in there for the socialization aspect, not for the aspect of them getting themselves crushed. But they decide, we can socialize outside of football in other pursuits.
But you know what? I'm sorry, Tim. I hope I didn't cut you off there. No, but you were taught, and I talked to a lot of former players here in the Detroit area, and these conversations have come up before, and almost all of them said, you know what? I would still do it again, even with the risk, because of the financial reward it brought my family. So, especially it may be more so in the Black community than I can't speak to, how the white community see it, but most of these guys saw the financial reward.
It's a way out.
It's a way out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think about like this situation where this former coach at Albany State said he'd signed Ray Lewis. He went down to Ray Lewis's house somewhere in South Florida, and Ray's house did not have. He had dirt was his floors of his house, and he lost him to supposedly said he lost him to UM because they had money. Where before, it's all, under the table type stuff or whatever, or so this guy, so he intimated. But the idea is it's a financial decision.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's one of those things. When these kids are trying to better their families. And I know for me, I'm jaded. I don't watch these heart-wrenching stories on game day and these other pregame shows because everybody's got a story. And it's like, oh my gosh, another one. You get to that point.
I love those stories.
Exactly. See?
I told you that. I'm like,
it gives me somebody to root for.
But it's
if I don't know the player, then I'm like, oh, okay, I want that player to succeed. or I want to root for that player, because I'm not like you guys, maybe not following them all through college, or I hadn't been. And then, and now they changed a lot, different schools, right? So I'm not following them. But then when I hear their story, I like that.
Man, I don't even want to hear the national anthem. Just get the kickoff.
No more. It was just 2 hours worth of stories about this kid overcame having 7 eyes, and then you gotta go. Pardon me?
Let's get
7 eyes. Come on.
Yes, some hardship, and it's wonderful, and it's all well and good. But at the point, people are making business decisions. Why some people are going to other schools? People understand. Well, Texas A&M promised all their football players some sort of NIL deal because they have this cooperative type thing. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing we hadn't talked. We missed out on Jimbo Fisher, and being fired, but leaving with a $77 million golden parachute. For Texas A&M.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So it's like a friend of mine said, man, you go back and coach again. I said, dude, you would have to jackhammer me off my couch if I $7 million come to me, because $18 million has to be paid within 2 months of being fired. So it's like January 1st, around somewhere first of the year, January, Happy New Year to me, $18 million goes to my bank account. And he lives in Texas, no state income tax. Okay.
Hey, even Bobby Bonilla is jealous over that one, man.
For real, every July 1, Bobby Bonilla got $1 million.
Oh, yes.
Hey.
Bobby Bonilla Day. Yes.
So
he's like, damn, how can I get that hookup?
So it's all about financial decisions, and you do not fault the kids for doing it, and they're making sacrifices for their families. Yeah. And it's not as easy as saying don't play football. If a kid, sometimes you see these kids getting hurt, they're not crying so much before the pain, they're crying for what it means to his family. So you take consideration that it's like, oh man, I can't play anymore, scholarship's over, whatever. Because some schools will pull a scholarship because they need it for somebody else. It's a business.
We will see. As you see coaches change, you're gonna see a lot of that this year. We saw it with Dion going to Colorado last year. I mean, that's college football today. But
coming up on bowl season right now, you're gonna see a lot of high draft pick kids who are not playing in one of those New Year's Six or the FCF championship games. I'm not going to the Pull-In Weed Eater Bowl and risking getting hurt before I go to the combine or get drafted. You're going to see kids doing that because it's all about me now. It should have been all about me for Shedeur Sanders this year with the offensive line that nearly got him killed. He didn't even play his last game because he had a broken bone in his back.
Yeah.
Dad's going to make a financial decision because essentially Dion had child abuse. With that offensive line, that was child abuse. They should have had Children Protective Services on the sideline taking his kid away from him with the line that Colorado put out there week after week.
Yeah.
But you know what? Watching him this year, I watched a lot of their games. With all the flash and bravado that goes with that kid, I would give him one thing. He is a tough guy on that field.
Absolutely. Tough.
I mean, he took a beating, man.
He took hits all year long. And, but now, people are now, coming back at Colorado. This is like the weekly We Love Dion section. But people are saying, they still went 4-7 or something like that. Won one conference game, and they're saying they were no better than they were the year before. That's a lie. They won 4 games.
Yeah.
They won 1 the year before. But I think some of the shine has come off. I think this past week or the past 24 hours, he lost 3 recruits, top recruits.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Maybe some of the shine is starting to come off of him.
Yeah. Speaking of, man, how about some of those rivalry games last weekend? The Alabama-Auburn game, I mean, Milrose goes from being run out of town.
Set up on the left side as
to
Milrow
a
bobbles
hero
the snap a little bit.
with that
And now
final
he's
pass.
getting some heat. Late
I
throw
mean, how does
down
that-
the middle and got it
How does
complete.
that DB let that
And
happen?
still going.
But
Malik
let's
Benson.
let that kid get behind him. I never understood. It's like you got the players in front of you, brother. It's in front of you. You don't let them get behind you. And they rush like nobody because Milrow had forever to throw the ball, which was painful to watch.
But I mean,
It was a good game.
the thing about the rivalry game like this, Auburn has really struggled all year, but they played their butts off the other day.
Auburn played its best game of the season, only to have it, blow up in their faces at the very end. I thought they were just. I mean, they gashed Alabama running, and you try to think about it. Alabama's not going to play Georgia in the for the SEC championship on Saturday at downtown at Mercedes-Benz here in Atlanta, and it's going to be a great game. Number one, Georgia doesn't handle running quarterbacks well. Milrow is a very mobile, outstanding player. You saw he made a lot of plays with his legs.
Like this play right here was a terrific play.
And that's where he knocked that kid out. Number one is at the lay down. Number one, there you go to sleep. He hit him head on like that.
Wow.
Georgia has problems with running quarterbacks, and Alabama has a problem against the run. And Georgia runs very well, and Alabama hasn't seen a tight end like.
Here comes the play.
Yeah. Okay, got all day. Nobody's rushing. 3 guys are rushing. 8 people are rushing.
A lot of time.
Boom.
Wow.
How did you let him get behind you?
How did he get behind you? I mean, and it was an easy catch.
Yeah.
All things considered.
How in the world do you let him get behind you? Some of these photographers are going to be fired because they're too busy watching the play instead of shooting. So,
You think?
oh yeah, I'm like, I paid you to go down there and shoot the photo to get the photo of the game, and you watching it. Here we go.
But I assure you, number 4, I don't know the name. He's gotten some hate behind this.
He has.
If
He's having nice
hadn't pulled that off, he might have to have got an escort out of Tuscaloosa.
Oh, absolutely. That's that you were saying. It's like he went from being the GOAT to being the hero. He'll never have to buy a meal in Tuscaloosa again. And they did mention during the game, members of the Kick 6 team came back for this game. I guess to try to fire Auburn up. But that game, that right there, the missed field goal, the guy ran back for a touchdown. Iron Bowl has been awesome over the years. And again, that was the last regular season game for CBS. And this coming Saturday will be the last game, period, for CBS and the SEC because ESPN takes over for SEC next year. I'm really going to miss Danielson and seeing that crew working the game because at 3:30 on Saturdays I'm hearing that theme music that they have and looking for the big game out of the SEC. So it's a bittersweet thing happening this weekend in Atlanta for sure.
Yeah, growing up in the South and being here in the Midwest and the Detroit area for so many years, I've seen both ends of 2 of the best college football rivalries. We just saw a little bit about Auburn and Alabama, Michigan and Ohio State. That thing is real too. I gotta say, and the pain on Ryan's Day face after that game, walking back to the locker room, is like, bro, he just wanted to keep walking. If somebody didn't make him turn left to go in that Ohio State locker room, he might have just kept walking all the way back to Columbus.
Well, he's only lost 7 games since he's been up there. I mean, anybody could take that. I've lost 7 games and I think 4 seasons. 7, okay? That should be. I've been in a championship series. That should be enough. But it means nothing if you don't beat Michigan. If you don't beat Michigan, it doesn't mean squadouche. They can win a national championship, but if they haven't beat Michigan, That's all people gonna talk about. Well, we got you. You may have won a championship, but we got you. Okay. So,
True.
Yeah, but as we go into the play, I think the 4 now we got Michigan, Georgia, Florida State,
in Washington.
and Washington.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody beating Georgia.
I think Alabama has a really good chance of beating Georgia.
Yeah, they're gonna beat them twice.
Well, they've only have to beat them one time.
Well, they're gonna play them this week, right? They're gonna play in an SEC title game.
They've only played them. That'll be the only time they played this year. So,
yeah, but can Alabama lose and get to the?
They can, because it depends on if Washington loses to Oregon. I don't know if that bumps Oregon up. I'm trying to remember where Oregon was.
Oregon has 1 loss to Washington.
Oregon is 5. So Oregon, if they win, Oregon knocks Washington out, and they're in the top 4. It'll be Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Florida State. Man, they play Louisville in the championship for the ACC.
Louisville,
And
they beat
Louisville
them.
got beat by Kentucky this past week, so they're going to be coming out going crazy.
I can see Louisville beating them.
Not the same without their starting quarterback. Florida State very well could be gone, and that would open the door for Oregon or Ohio State, depending on those championship games. Because what is that? You got the Big Ten, Iowa versus Michigan. Okay, Michigan has that. Alabama, Georgia, both of them will have a chance. Alabama's at 8. They got a lot of stuff got to happen. Texas has got to lose to Oklahoma State. You would think, because I think Texas beat Alabama this year in Tuscaloosa. Yeah. So you talk about head to head. Yeah, there's a lot of folks from Alabama rooting for Oklahoma State. You know, that's going to happen. And then you got the last ever Pac-12 anything. Oregon, Washington. That's the last conference game ever with that. And my money would be on Oregon, because I think that as much as I don't think as much as I don't want to like him, because I thought he was such a trash quarterback at Auburn, I think Nix is the Heisman Trophy winner. He just has had a phenomenal year at Oregon.
He really has.
So I think he's the guy that he needs to be. He needs to be the guy taking home the trophy this year, as opposed to anybody else.
You know, guys, we hadn't been together in a while, so it's so much we didn't get a chance to get to tonight, and we're already over time. But I do want to mention this, Tim, because I thought this was a great note you had earlier. The reason why Southern and Grambling blow off the FCS playoff every year. What did they have at the
It's 64,000 folks
64,000, right?
At the Superdome for the Southern Grambling game, and that's money in New Orleans, Southern, and Grambling. Okay,
right.
And all the FCS games that they played, the total attendance was 42,653.
That is a great stat.
That's why every year Southern and Grambling says, when they say, well, why don't you guys want to play for the playoffs? And they're like, we good. We're going to go to New Orleans every Saturday after Thanksgiving, fill the place up, make money, have a party. It's every year, every single year. So hats off to everybody who's involved in the Bayou Classic.
And
have you been to the Bayou Classic?
No, because when I covered Jackson State, they were in the playoffs every year. So every Saturday after Thanksgiving, I was somewhere in Montana or in Jackson or watching Jackson State get beat in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do.
Because we lose in the first round of playoffs, and maybe we get in this. You know, we need to get our good guy, our good buddy Earl Kitchens in here to have this conversation too. Because I was talking with some guys the other day. My alma mater, Virginia Union, lost in the first round again. This time they lost to Kutztown State. Wasn't really close. I think it was 38-14. And Union has a fine football team. But the problem tree, they go play Kutztown State, who can recruit every player I know you probably don't even know where it is. I didn't know where it is either. It's right outside.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, where? Never heard of it.
It's outside of. It's not far from Philly, about an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the deal is, these guys can recruit. Kutztown can recruit outstanding African American players and outstanding white players. Virginia Union can recruit outstanding Black players. They can't go into that other recruiting barrel and get enough quality players. And every time those two teams show up, that's what gets them. That's why we can't advance in that. You know, everybody's, well, you got to try harder. Ain't no trying harder than that. But we are way over time, guys. I mean, it is so good to be back with you. We want to thank Dr. Rebecca Miley Hampton for checking in with us tonight. And we'll be back next week, next Tuesday. And we got a lot more to get into, but it was great.
It was great. Good to have the band back together again.
Absolutely.
All right. Be kind, everybody. Yeah.
Peace, everybody.
All right. Bye.